Welcome to the channel. Tonight, dive into 3 bone-chilling true stories captured on camera. Photos and footage that prove some horrors are all too real. Brace yourself for unsettling encounters that will haunt your dreams. Ready to face the unknown? In the autumn of 2018, a crumbling house stood at the edge of an abandoned subdivision in Maryland, shrouded in ivy and silence. The sky always seemed gray there, the air colder than the rest of town. Local teens called it Dead Frame, partly because of a rumored Polaroid that captured something wrong, and partly because anyone who stayed overnight there never stayed the same. Jacob Ellis, a 27-year-old freelance videographer, had no time for ghost stories. He was logical, meticulous, and mostly broke. When his YouTube channel Haunt and Found needed a spike in views, his roommate Darren suggested a challenge. Stay overnight in Dead Frame, film everything, and see if the photo was real. It's clickbait gold, bro, Darren said, flipping his laptop to show a grainy Reddit post titled, "Found this Polaroid in a demolished house. The face isn't mine." The photo showed a dim hallway, the back of a man's head in the foreground, supposedly the poster. But reflected in a cracked mirror was not his face, but something else. A wide, slack-jawed grin with milky eyes and no hair. It looked photoshopped. It had to be. But thousands of users swore it was unedited. The metadata, strangely, was corrupted. That intrigued Jacob. He wasn't a believer, but he knew how much people wanted to be. And belief in this business was currency. He packed his Canon XA11, his Sony IR camera, a shoulder rig, 3 mics, and a cheap EMF reader for ambience. He also brought a new toy, a thermal scope Darren had borrowed from his brother in the military. It could detect heat signatures through walls. Just in case the ghost has a fever, Darren joked. They drove out on October 11th. The sun dipped behind skeletal trees, and the road grew narrow, broken with frost-heaved asphalt and moss. Finally, they saw it. 412 Bexley Lane, slumped against the woods like a drunk at a wake. The house was 2 stories, dark red paint peeling off like sunburned skin. Every window was broken or missing. The front door creaked open in the wind, even though the air was still. "I hate this place already," Darren said, setting up the GoPro at the porch. "You know the last guy who filmed here, Luke Quire, deleted all his socials right after? Like within 48 hours. Poof. Gone." "Did he see the smiling face too?" Jacob asked, half mocking.
No idea.
But he left this comment before deleting. "I was never alone in that house. Not even before I arrived." They started filming at 6:03 p.m. The intro was standard. Jacob did a slow pan of the house, narrated with practiced suspense, and showed the printed version of the infamous photo. "We're going in," he whispered. Inside, the air was foul, wet rot and something metallic, like old blood and rust. The first floor was in ruins. Graffiti layered every surface. Occult symbols, teens' initials, crude drawings of screaming faces. Dust clung to the air in glittering motes. Jacob filmed each room with methodical precision. Kitchens collapsed. Basement entrance is here. No movement. MF's clear. They laughed when the reader blipped to life near the living room mirror. "Probably a dead wire," Jacob muttered, tapping it. But when he pointed the infrared camera at the same spot, the mirror glowed a faint red. "Heat?" Darren asked. "But it's like 50 degrees in here." The reading didn't move. It wasn't residual heat. It was a constant shape, vaguely human, pressed against the mirror from the inside. Jacob zoomed in. The shape vanished. He replayed the footage. The shape was still there in the thermal humanoid, hunched, almost headless. "This is probably some insulation artifact," he said, but his voice wavered. They moved to the second floor at 7:42 p.m. Room 204 had no windows, which was odd because the exterior clearly showed 2 on that side. Inside was a mattress, black with mold. A rocking horse lay on its side in the corner, its paint chipped to bone. They found the camera tripod first, a battered Sony AX53, the same model Luke Quire had reportedly used. Darren whistled. No camera though. Just this. He picked up a Polaroid, resting face down under the horse. It was the same photo from Reddit. But behind the grinning reflection, just barely visible in the gloom, was a third figure. A silhouette watching from the stairwell. They didn't speak for nearly a minute. Then Darren said, "That wasn't in the online version." Jacob turned off the infrared. "We'll finish the upstairs sweep and go live for the midnight stream. Let's just focus." At 9:00 p.m. they set up the live feed. The camera faced the mirror. Behind the lens, Jacob paced. Darren manned the laptop, monitoring chat. The EMF buzzed now and then, but nothing substantial. Most of the chat accused them of faking the photo. Then came a new comment. "You're standing in front of it." Username: GhostPixels88. Jacob froze. "Is this you?" he asked Darren. Darren shook his head. "Mods already IP flagged them. It's not me." The camera, still focused on the mirror, began to distort. The frame warped, pulsing with compression artifacts. Audio crackelt. Then silence. The mirror fogged, only it wasn't fog. It was breath, and it was on the inside. They rewatched the footage offline, frame by frame. At timestamp 16:17 something moved. In the mirror, not just a face, the grin. Too wide, too smooth. It smiled without lips. Teeth rose too perfect. Eyes milky and lidless. It stood behind Jacob just outside the frame. But Jacob had been alone in front of the mirror. Darren had been in the hallway. They zoomed in, adjusted contrast, sharpened the exposure. The shape was lean, unnaturally tall, dressed in what looked like a hospital gown. Its neck twisted slowly, like a marionette pulled by an uncertain hand. Then the frame skipped. The grin was closer. One more frame. Gone. Jacob sat motionless. No one was there. That's not a person. That is smiling at us right now, Darren said. He turned the laptop toward Jacob. The live feed had resumed. In the mirror, nothing but static. But in the corner was a shadow. A figure swaying gently, almost like it was waiting. At 11:44 p.m., a loud bang came from downstairs. The GoPro feed showed the basement door wide open. They had not opened it. Against every instinct, Jacob picked up the thermal scope and walked downstairs. The scope showed the usual ambient shades until he aimed it at the basement steps. Red footprints, bare, human, leading upward from the dark. Still warm, still wet. Then the scope glitched. Not once, not twice, 7 frames missing. He lowered it. The footprints were gone. "Darren?" he whispered into the mic silence. Then a scream. Not from the mic, but from inside the house. It was coming from room 204. Jacob sprinted upstairs. The room was empty, except for the camera knocked over, and the mirror, now broken. Etched in dust on the shattered glass was a single word, written with a fingertip: replace. The glass dust settled in his lungs. Jacob coughed and stepped back from the mirror, stunned by how the word replace was etched. It wasn't scribbled in haste. It was deliberate, slow, like someone had traced each letter with care. The tip of a finger had dug through thick dust, pressing against glass with purpose, leaving grooves like scratches on a blackboard. Not a smear. A message. He turned to the hallway, but Darren wasn't there. "Darren?" he called out again, louder this time. Silence. Jacob's mind fought between two things: the rational idea that Darren was pulling an elaborate scare for the video, or the darker, colder idea rising up from some ancestral place in his spine, that Darren had been taken. Not left. Not missing. Taken. He pushed past the rising static of fear, trying to steady his breathing. His mic still worked. The thermal scope was slung over his shoulder. He gripped it tighter now, unsure if it was his tool or a poor excuse for a weapon. He glanced at the laptop still streaming. The chat was going wild. "Where is Darren? Dude, you're not alone? Look to your left. Left, 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 left." His heart froze. He turned slowly. Nothing was there. But the mirror, though broken, had one shard still hanging intact, slightly bent forward like a crooked tooth. He caught his reflection and noticed something behind him, just over his left shoulder. A faint silhouette, too thin, too tall, as if the image had been stretched vertically. He spun. Nothing. Just the peeling wall and the rocking horse in the corner. He turned back to the mirror shard. Now the silhouette was closer, half a head taller than him. No visible face. And then it tilted its head. Jacob dropped the scope, grabbed the camera, and ran into the hallway. He reached the top of the staircase and hesitated. Something about the downstairs felt wrong now, like the air had gotten thicker, colder, even darker. Not just shadow dark, blackout dark, like light had surrendered. The GoPro feed was still transmitting to the laptop, but now it was nothing but glitchy static. Occasionally, the timestamp flickered on screen. 11:56, then 1:3, then 11:1. Like the house was chewing on time. His mic gave a short burst of white noise, followed by a voice. Whispered. Almost not there. "You said you didn't believe?" Jacob whipped around. Empty hallway. "Who said that?" he asked, the words dry in his throat. The voice didn't come again, but now a slow creaking started behind the walls. Not from the floorboards, from inside the walls. He followed the sound to the guest bedroom across from 204. Its door was half-hinged, hanging at an angle. Jacob pushed it open gently with his foot. The room was bare.
Floorboard stripped, no furniture.
But at the far end was a closet. The bifold doors were bulging slightly outward, as if something inside was pressing against them, gently, like a breathless chest. Jacob raised the thermal scope. Red. Pulsing. Heat source, human level. Size child-sized. Shape wrong. The thermal outline was crouched, but its limbs extended too far. Elbows that reached the floor. A long, bony neck arched like a hang thing. No head, just a vague bulge where a face should be. The scope flickered. The signature vanished. He lowered the scope. The closet doors were open. He hadn't moved. He hadn't blinked. They had been shut. Hadn't they? Inside the closet, etched in the drywall, were dozens of tiny handprints. Some child-sized, some smaller than a newborn's. One was larger than his own. And in the center, written in deep gouges, were 3 words. "Don't look back." A sudden crash exploded behind him. The sound of shattering wood, breaking floor, a grunt, and then Darren screaming. Jacob bolted back into the hallway. Room 204's door slammed shut in front of him. No wind, no movement. Then the scream again, muffled, below, from the basement. He didn't remember making the choice. He was suddenly running downstairs, breath sharp, feet hammering the creaking steps. The thermal scope bounced against his side. He hit the ground floor and turned toward the basement door, which was now wide open. Not swinging, not cracked, but open as if someone had just invited him down. He hesitated. Then something stepped out from the dark. First, he thought it was Darren. The shape was right. The height, the way it staggered forward like he'd fallen. "Darren?" Jacob whispered. No response. The figure reached the bottom of the stairs, then began to climb. It wasn't Darren. As it moved into the low light, Jacob saw the figure wore a long, dirty hospital gown, soaked at the hem. Its hands were too long, fingers dragging across the stairs as it climbed. Its neck too thin, impossibly thin, tilted to the side. No face, just a smooth plane of skin, pulled taut where eyes and mouth should be. Jacob stepped back, heart hammering, but his camera was still up, still filming. The figure stopped 3 steps from the top and lifted one hand. A finger pressed to the blank face, to where its lips should be, as if saying "Yes," and then, impossibly, it smiled. The skin split along invisible seams. Slowly, a wide grin tore itself open. No blood, no sound, just a grin, white and endless, growing far too wide. Jacob dropped the camera and ran. He made it to the front door and tried to throw it open. It wouldn't budge. He twisted the handle, kicked it, slammed his shoulder against the wood. Nothing. Behind him, the stairs creaked. He didn't turn. Instead, he ran for the kitchen, or what was left of it. The back door was barely holding on to its hinges. He hit it with full force and it burst open, with splintering, sending him stumbling into the overgrown backyard. The cold hit him like a slap. The grass was dead. The trees looked like they had withered under the weight of centuries. There was no sound.
No bugs.
No wind. Not even the whisper of leaves. Just silence. He looked back at the house. Every window now had a face. Not human. Just shapes. Some with mouths. Some with holes where eyes might have been. And all of them were grinning. He stepped back. Tripped on a branch. Landed hard. Scrambled to his feet. From the upstairs window, room 204. A shadow stood watching him. Then it stepped back and vanished. Jacob didn't wait. He ran into the woods.
No flashlight.
No path. Just instinct. Branches tore at his arms and face. Mud soaked his jeans. Something sharp ripped his jacket. He ran until his lungs burned, until the house was gone. He didn't stop running until he hit the road. He flagged down a passing truck. He didn't explain much, just gave the address and begged the driver to call the police. When the authorities arrived at 412 Bexley Lane, they found only his camera equipment. No sign of Darren.
No laptop. No mirror.
The footage was intact, but something was wrong. In every video file Jacob had recorded, there were extra shadows. Movements that didn't line up with his own. And in every reflection, every window, every mirror, every glass surface, the same face. The grin, milky eyes, no hair, staring out always too close to the camera. The final clip was filmed from the floor of the living room, where Jacob had dropped the Canon during his escape. It ran for 4 minutes. The camera faced the open basement door. At 2 minutes and 37 seconds, a figure emerged. It was Darren, but his movements were jerky, like he wasn't in control. He walked toward the camera, bent down, and smiled. Only it wasn't Darren's smile. It was too wide. The smile stretched impossibly wide, teeth unnaturally white, gleaming even in the low light of the basement. Darren's eyes, or what should have been his eyes, were a milky white, void of any pupils or iris. The grin looked almost predatory, as if it wasn't just meant to frighten but to devour. The figure's head tilted slowly, like a broken doll winding down on invisible gears. Jacob's fingers trembled as he grabbed the camera from the floor, his heart pounding so hard it felt like it would burst through his ribcage. He knew what he was seeing wasn't human. It was a mimic, an imitation of his friend, but corrupted by something malevolent. The figure lurched forward, then froze just outside the basement doorway. It didn't speak, but Jacob could swear the room felt charged with a silent demand. Stay. Be with us. But Jacob fled. He bolted up the stairs, crashing through the broken kitchen, bursting through the back door again, gasping for air in the chill night. He ran until he found the highway, his mind spinning, each step heavier than the last. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed. The police found Jacob the next morning, curled up beside his car, muttering incoherent words about the grin and the house that eats faces. When investigators searched the property, they found no sign of Darren or any living creature, but they did find something deeply disturbing. Etched into the foundation beneath the house was a series of symbols, ancient sigils scrawled in a dried, reddish substance that tested as human blood. Local experts suggested the symbols were part of an old occult ritual meant to bind souls or trap spirits in physical space. But it was unclear who had performed the ritual or why it remained, as the house had been abandoned for over 20 years. Jacob refused to talk about what he saw beyond a few cryptic words. "It wants a replacement. I almost was." His footage went viral, sparking debates in paranormal circles. Skeptics called it clever editing, while believers cited the thermal anomalies and unexplained shadows as proof of a haunting. But Jacob knew the truth. The house was not just haunted, it was alive. It fed on fear, on presence, on faces. And it was still waiting. One night, months later, Jacob's phone pinged with a message from an unknown number. It was a single photo, a grainy, black and white image of a mirror, cracked and dusty. But in the reflection, a face was grinning back. Milky eyes, no hair, and a smile that stretched too wide. Below the photo was one word: replace. Jacob stared at the message, unable to blink away the chill that crept up his spine. The word replace burned into his mind, relentless. He tried to forget the house, to bury the footage, but the shadows followed him like a second skin. Days turned to weeks. He moved cities, changed numbers, cut ties. But every mirror, every reflective surface held that same distorted grin in the corner of his vision. Always there, always waiting. One evening, desperate for answers, he dug into local archives, combing through decades-old newspapers. He found stories of people vanishing near the abandoned subdivision, reports dismissed as run-of-the-mill disappearances until he discovered a recurring thread. Witnesses reported seeing a figure matching the grin description, a tall, faceless entity appearing before the disappearances. In 1978, a family vanished from the same house. The father was last seen taking a photo with a Polaroid camera, his face gone in the final shot, replaced by the same wide grin. The mother and child were never found. Jacob pieced together a pattern. The house was a trap, a gateway feeding on those who came close, copying their image before swallowing them whole, then wearing their faces as a mask. He recorded a final video message, his voice shaking, hands trembling. "If you get this, don't go to the house. Don't even look at photos from there. It's not just a building. It's a predator." Days later, Jacob disappeared. His channel went silent, the last upload a video showing the Polaroid with the grin face staring back at the camera. The comment beneath it simply read, "Replace." No one has seen or heard from him since. The house at 412 Bexley Lane stands empty, the windows like empty eye sockets, the cracked mirrors waiting to swallow the next face. Months after Jacob's disappearance, curiosity and fear wove a new tale around 412 Bexley Lane. The house still loomed over the abandoned subdivision, untouched but whispering in the dark. Stories circulated of strange lights flickering behind the boarded windows, and of the faint sound of static-laden voices late at night. A few brave or reckless souls attempted to enter, driven by thrill or skepticism. Most fled within minutes, their faces pale, minds rattled by unexplainable shadows or sudden temperature drops. A handful disappeared, swallowed by the house's silent hunger, never to be seen again. Investigators who examined the site after Jacob's final video noted oddities. Cameras would malfunction inexplicably. Recordings showed distorted images, figures standing behind the operators, faces warped beyond recognition. Thermal scopes caught fleeting heat signatures, but when reviewed, revealed figures with impossibly elongated limbs and blurred features, like ink bleeding through water. The Polaroid photo that started it all, the one with the wide, faceless grin, remained a haunting artifact, appearing in the possession of those who dared approach the house. Some claimed it moved, subtly changing its angle or lighting, as if watching them. Attempts to destroy or discard it failed. The photo would reappear, intact, sometimes inside locked rooms or taped to mirrors. The house itself became an urban legend, A cursed place that consumed souls and copied their faces to lure more victims. The word replace became a whispered warning, scrawled in dust or scratched into walls, a sign that the house had marked its next target. No one knows what the entity is, a spirit, a demon, or something beyond comprehension. What's certain is that it is patient, waiting for someone else to enter, to film, to photograph, to look. And when it finds its prey, it wears their face. The smiles. The old asylum sat on the outskirts of town like a monument to forgotten horrors. Its brick walls were cracked and stained, windows shattered or boarded up, and the iron gates rusted shut long ago. Yet people still spoke of it in hushed tones, sharing stories of strange noises, flickering lights, and shadows moving behind the dark glass. The asylum's name had been lost to time, but the memories lingered in the minds of those who dared venture near. Maggie was one such person, a paranormal investigator with a growing online following. She sought to uncover truths buried beneath rumors and urban legends. Armed with cameras, voice recorders, and a fearless determination, she planned a live-streamed exploration inside the building. Her followers tuned in as she pushed open the creaking gate, the screech echoing like a scream into the empty courtyard. Inside, the air was thick with decay, a heavy scent of mold and old wood. Floors creaked beneath her boots, and the beam of her flashlight cut through the dense darkness. She spoke softly to the camera, narrating each step. "This place closed in the early 80s, she said. But stories say the patients never truly left. Some claim their spirits still roam these halls, trapped between worlds. As she moved deeper, Maggie found evidence of past lives, the rusted remnants of wheelchairs, peeling medical charts, graffiti scrawled by vandals long gone. Yet the atmosphere was charged, a palpable tension that made the hairs on her arms stand up. Suddenly, the beam caught a figure at the end of a hallway, a pale face framed by tangled hair, eyes wide and dark. She blinked, and it vanished. Her heart leapt, and her viewers exploded with messages. "Did you see that? Ghost! Go back!" But Maggie pressed forward, her curiosity stronger than fear. She entered the old patient wing, where rooms were lined with beds, many stripped bare. One room in particular caught her attention. Its door hung crooked, revealing a dark interior cluttered with broken furniture and torn sheets. Inside, Maggie found a photo album, its cover cracked and stained. She flipped through the pages, revealing pictures of patients with hollow eyes and forced smiles. One photo stood out, a young woman, seated in a wheelchair, with eyes that seemed to follow Maggie's every move. Suddenly, the flashlight flickered and died. The room plunged into darkness. Maggie's breath caught in her throat. Her camera's night vision kicked in, casting eerie green hues on the walls. From the corner, a soft whisper drifted through the air, words indistinct but growing louder. Maggie aimed her mic toward the sound. "Help me!" Her skin prickled. Then, footsteps echoed down the hall. She turned toward the sound. A shadow glided past the doorway, too quick to catch, leaving a cold spot behind. Her viewers urged her to leave, but Maggie was transfixed. The whispers grew to murmurs, overlapping voices pleading, laughing, crying. Then a chilling voice, clear and sharp. "You shouldn't be here." The lights flickered back on. Maggie blinked. The room was empty, but on the far wall, smeared in what looked like dirt or blood, was a message. "Stay with US." Maggie's hands trembled as she wiped the smeared message from the wall, but the words seemed to writhe beneath her fingers, refusing to be erased. The camera in her other hand trembled too, its lens fogging slightly as the temperature dropped around her. She whispered into the mic, "If anyone's here, please, make yourself known." Her voice sounded hollow, swallowed by the vast emptiness of the asylum. Her viewers' messages flooded the chat, a mix of concern and fascination. "Run! You're gonna get possessed. She's brave." The hallway behind her stretched endlessly, the flickering fluorescence above buzzing with an unnatural hum. Maggie stepped back cautiously and turned toward a narrow staircase leading to the basement, an area she hadn't planned to explore but felt compelled to enter. The basement was colder, the air thick with damp and something else, something metallic and bitter. The walls were lined with rusted pipes and old equipment, some unrecognizable relics of medical torture disguised as treatment. As Maggie descended, her flashlight caught something lying on the floor. A torn hospital gown, stained and stiff with age. She picked it up, shivering. The fabric felt sticky, warm to the touch. Suddenly, a sharp noise echoed behind her. A heavy door slamming shut. She spun around, heart pounding. The staircase was gone. In its place was a solid brick wall. Panic rose like bile in her throat. She pounded on the bricks, screaming, but no sound escaped. Her viewers screamed with her over the stream, begging her to stay calm, to find another way out. The temperature plunged further. Maggie turned and felt a presence. Behind her, a figure moved. It was small, childlike, with skin pale as death and eyes that glowed faintly in the dark. The child whispered, "Stay, forever." Maggie backed away, her breathing ragged. She stumbled through the basement corridors, searching for an exit, but every hallway twisted back upon itself. Every door led to more darkness. Her camera's night vision revealed shadowy figures emerging from the walls. Patients, staff, tortured souls, all frozen in time but watching, waiting. One stepped forward, a nurse with a cracked porcelain mask, her mouth opening in a silent scream. She reached out, fingers stretching impossibly long. Maggie screamed and sprinted blindly until she collided with a wall. The camera slipped from her grasp. She dropped to her knees, gasping, as cold hands gripped her shoulders. "Stay with us." The voices chanted, growing louder. A chorus of lost souls begging for release or new company. The feed cut abruptly. Maggie's screen went dark for a long moment, and her viewers held their breath. Then, after what felt like an eternity, the feed flickered back on, showing only a blur of darkness and muffled breathing. She was on the floor, camera angled awkwardly, capturing only fragments of her face and the cold stone walls. Her breathing was shallow, the panic barely controlled. She whispered, I don't know where I am. The basement, it's like a maze. There's no way out." Suddenly, footsteps echoed closer, slow and deliberate. A shadow loomed just outside the camera's frame, and Maggie turned slowly to face it. A man, dressed in an old, tattered nurse's uniform, stood silently. His face was pale, eyes hollow and sunken, mouth stitched shut with thick, black thread. He raised a hand, fingers long and skeletal, and pointed to a narrow tunnel barely visible in the corner. Maggie hesitated but nodded, knowing she had little choice. She crawled toward the tunnel, heart pounding, voice shaky as she murmured, "Thank you, I think." The passageway was narrow, forcing her to move on hands and knees. The walls closed in, dripping water that hissed where it met her skin. Voices whispered around her, some pleading, some angry. She crawled deeper until she reached a door marked with faded letters, "Therapy Room 7. She pushed it open, the hinges creaking like bones breaking. Inside, the room was sterile but layered with dust and cobwebs. An old chair sat center stage, its leather cracked and stained. In front of it was a mirror, large, cracked, but reflective. Maggie's reflection shimmered and flickered. Then slowly it changed. Her face blurred, melting into something else. Pale skin, hollow eyes, and that awful grin. She gasped and stepped back. The reflection smiled wider. Suddenly, the chair behind her rocked, as if someone unseen had sat down. Whispers filled the room. "Stay, stay." Maggie turned to run, but the door slammed shut. The mirror shattered, The shards of the mirror lay scattered across the floor, reflecting jagged fragments of Maggie's terrified face. The room plunged into darkness again, save for the faint glow of her camera's night vision. She scrambled toward the door, desperate to escape the cold grip of the asylum's suffocating walls. But the door wouldn't budge. It was as if an unseen force held it firmly shut. Her breath came in ragged gasps. Around her, the whispers swirled like a tempest, voices overlapping in urgent pleas, curses, and warnings. Then, through the haze of sound, one voice rose above the rest, low, gravelly, unmistakably human but filled with a cold, cruel amusement. "Welcome back." The light flickered back on, revealing a figure seated in the cracked chair. It was a man, his features gaunt, eyes dark and endless pits. His smile was thin and sharp, devoid of warmth. Maggie froze. Who are you?" she stammered. The man chuckled, a dry, rasping sound. "I'm what's left of the doctor who once tried to heal this place. But now, I'm the keeper." His gaze bore into hers, and Maggie felt a weight pressing on her soul, as though the very air thickened with despair. "You've come seeking truth," he said, voice soft but edged with menace. "But some truths are better left buried." The room around them began to warp, walls bending and shifting as the asylum's dark history replayed before Maggie's eyes. She saw patients strapped to beds, their screams muffled by thick walls. Doctors experimenting with cruel treatments, their eyes devoid of empathy. And the final moments of a young woman, the one in the photo, left to die alone in this very room. The doctor's spirit rose from the chair, his body flickering like a broken hologram. "They all stayed," he whispered. "And now, so will you." Maggie backed away, but the walls closed in. Her camera captured everything, the torment, the faces, the endless corridors folding into themselves. Suddenly, the room snapped back to its original form. The door creaked open. Maggie didn't hesitate. She ran. Maggie burst through the door, stumbling into the dimly lit hallway. The oppressive weight that had pressed on her moments before lifted just enough for her to breathe again, though the cold chill still clung to her skin. She glanced behind, half expecting the doctor or any of the tormented spirits to follow. But the corridor was empty, silent except for the distant dripping of water. Her heart hammered in her chest as she moved forward, desperate to find an exit. The asylum's layout twisted and turned, hallways looping impossibly, as if the building itself refused to let her leave. Doors opened into brick walls, windows shattered into black voids. The whispers chased her, ebbing and flowing like a tide of sorrow and rage. Then, she found the main lobby, a vast room with cracked marble floors and peeling paint. Moonlight filtered through the broken ceiling, casting eerie patterns on the debris. In the center stood a rusted wheelchair, facing an ornate mirror covered in grime. Drawn like a moth, Maggie approached the mirror. She wiped the dirt away with trembling hands. Her reflection stared back, pale, exhausted, but unmistakably her, until the eyes shifted, becoming empty hollows. The mouth twisted into that same cruel grin she had seen before. Suddenly, the room grew ice-cold. The shadows stretched long and dark, wrapping around her like chains. Voices whispered urgently, "Stay with us?" Maggie's breath caught. She felt a pull, a magnetic force drawing her toward the mirror. With all her strength, she tore her gaze away and ran toward the exit doors. The gates loomed ahead, swinging open slowly as if inviting her escape. She burst through into the night air, lungs burning, heart pounding. Behind her, the asylum sighed, a deep, hollow sound like a breath exhaled after a long wait. Maggie looked back once. The windows flickered with ghostly faces, watching, waiting for the next soul to enter. Her camera, still recording, captured one final frame before cutting out. The faint outline of a smiling face reflected in the dark glass. Eyes milky white, grin impossibly wide. She never uploaded the footage. Some stories are better left in the shadows. In a quiet town nestled among dense woods, an old family cabin sat abandoned for decades. Weather-beaten and forgotten, it was a relic of simpler times. Yet those who passed by swore the air around it grew colder, heavier, as if the house itself held a secret. Local legend told of the Morley family who once lived there. One by one, they vanished without a trace, leaving behind only whispered rumors and a chilling mystery. When the last family member disappeared, the cabin was sealed, left to rot. Years later, a group of friends decided to explore the cabin, driven by curiosity and a shared love of the paranormal. Among them was Emily, a budding photographer eager to capture evidence of the unexplained. Armed with cameras, flashlights, and nerves of steel, they arrived just before sunset. The cabin's creaking door groaned open, revealing a dim interior coated in dust and shadows. The air smelled of wood rot and something else, something faintly metallic and unsettling. Emily lifted her camera, snapping photos of the peeling wallpaper, the broken furniture, the eerie silence. As twilight deepened, strange things began to happen. Shadows shifted oddly, voices whispered just out of earshot, and cold spots appeared without warning. In the fading light, Emily noticed a figure standing in the corner. A woman, translucent and pale, her eyes hollow and mourning. She clicked the shutter. The camera's flash illuminated the figure, who vanished instantly. The photos revealed more than Emily expected. Faint outlines, glowing eyes, and shapes that didn't belong. The friends debated whether to stay or leave, but the cabin seemed to pulse with a life of its own, trapping them inside. That night, the camera recorded more than just images. It caught the whispers, the footsteps, and a presence that watched, waiting. Emily's photos told a story of loss, sorrow, and something far darker lurking beneath the surface. As dawn approached, they realized the cabin's secret was more terrifying than they could imagine. An escape might not be an option. As the night deepened, Emily's camera continued to capture strange phenomena. The photos showed faint silhouettes lurking near the windows, eyes glinting in the darkness. The whispers grew louder, turning into broken phrases that hinted at tragedy and betrayal. The friends huddled close, uneasy but unwilling to leave. In the dim light, Emily noticed a faded diary lying beneath a loose floorboard. Its pages were brittle, filled with hurried scrawls recounting the last days of the Morley family. The entries spoke of a shadow that crept into the house, feeding on grief and fear, twisting the family's bonds until nothing remained but despair. One page ended abruptly with a chilling warning: "Do not trust the faces that smile in the dark." Suddenly, the temperature plunged, and the cabin's door slammed shut, locking with an audible click. Panic surged through the group as they tried the windows, sealed tight, as if the cabin itself refused to let them escape. The flickering flashlight revealed movement in the corner. A child, barely visible, staring with empty eyes. The child's mouth twisted into a sinister grin, and then it vanished. Emily's camera caught the moment, the flash exposing a figure standing behind her, pale and grinning unnaturally wide. A cold hand brushed her shoulder. She spun around, but the space was empty. The whispers turned into a chant: "Join us, stay forever." The cabin's walls seemed to pulse, alive with the trapped souls of the Morley family, forever bound to a fate of sorrow and horror. The night stretched on, each moment heavier than the last, as the friends realized their nightmare had only just begun. The atmosphere in the cabin thickened, oppressive and suffocating. Every creak of the wood, every whispered breath seemed amplified, echoing like a chorus of unseen voices. Emily clutched her camera tighter, the lens fogged with cold and fear. The friends gathered in the main room, backs pressed together, trying to find comfort in numbers. Yet the air pulsed with tension, as if the house itself was breathing, watching, waiting. Emily flipped through the photos on her camera. Each image grew more disturbing. Faces appearing in mirrors where none stood, shadows contorting into impossible shapes, and that same eerie grin, stretched wide, almost mocking. Suddenly, a chilling breeze swept through the room despite the sealed windows. The flickering lights dimmed to near darkness. In the faint glow, the friend closest to Emily, a young man named Mark, pointed toward the fireplace. There, reflected in the cracked glass, a woman's face appeared, pale and wet-eyed, mouth opening in a silent scream. Mark's voice trembled. "Did you see that?" Emily nodded, swallowing hard. "We need to get out now." But the cabin had other plans. A low, guttural growl emanated from the walls, and the floorboards beneath them shifted, revealing a trapdoor that slammed open. Cold air rushed up, carrying the scent of earth and decay. Compelled by a mixture of terror and curiosity, Emily descended the stairs into the darkness below. The basement was a tomb of memories, old family relics, rusted toys, and letters yellowed with age. But among the relics, something more sinister lurked. A journal, open to a page smeared with dried blood, detailed rituals meant to bind spirits to the cabin forever. The final lines warned that anyone who disturbed the home would join the Morley family's eternal prison. Suddenly, the door slammed shut above her. The whispers returned, louder, pleading, and maddening. Emily's camera flickered, capturing glimpses of ghostly figures circling her, their faces twisted with sorrow and rage. The cabin was alive and it was hungry. The basement walls seemed to close in as Emily's flashlight flickered, struggling against the oppressive darkness. The air grew colder with every breath, thick with the scent of damp earth and something metallic, like old blood. Her camera, still recording, caught strange movements at the edge of the frame. Shadowy figures with hollow eyes, whispering unintelligible words. Their faces twisted in silent screams, mouths opening wide but producing no sound. Emily's heart hammered in her chest as she edged toward the far wall. There, scratched into the plaster, were words, deeply gouged, as if by fingernails desperate to escape. "You belong here." A sudden gust extinguished her flashlight, plunging her into total darkness. She fumbled for the camera's night vision and switched it on, the eerie green glow revealing a figure standing mere feet away. A woman in tattered clothes, eyes milky white, a wide grin carved unnaturally across her face. Emily stumbled backward, tripping over a broken crate, her breath ragged. The ghostly figure reached toward her, fingers elongated and twisted. "Stay with us?" it whispered, voice like dry leaves rustling. Desperation fueled Emily's escape as she scrambled back up the stairs, the whispers chasing her like a pack of wolves. The basement door slammed open ahead of her, and she burst into the main room, gasping for air. But the cabin was no longer the place she entered. Walls stretched impossibly far, windows dark voids swallowing the light. The floorboards groaned beneath her feet as she ran, pursued by unseen horrors. Her camera's battery was dying. With a final click, the feed went dark. The darkness swallowed Emily whole. She could barely see her own hands in front of her face as she stumbled through the shifting hallways of the cabin. The walls breathed, expanded, and contracted, warping the very space around her. Her camera was dead. No night vision.
No flash.
Just the pitch-black void and the sound of her own frantic heartbeat. Whispers echoed, growing louder, overlapping into a chaotic chorus of desperate voices begging, pleading, cursing. Emily pushed open a door, only to find herself back in the living room where the night had begun. But everything was wrong. The furniture was broken, twisted, and covered in dark stains that looked wet and fresh. The mirror on the wall caught her eye. She approached it cautiously, her reflection flickering. Then, the surface rippled like disturbed water, and the face staring back at her was no longer her own. It was the woman from the basement, eyes white and vacant, that impossibly wide grin still etched across her face. Suddenly, the mirror cracked, spider-webbing from the center outwards. Emily's breath caught. The cracks began to move, spreading faster, reaching toward her. A voice, clear and cold, whispered in her ear. "You belong here now." The room spun. When she awoke, she was sitting in a wheelchair, the same one from the photo she had taken earlier. Her hands were bound, her body weak but conscious. Surrounding her were the translucent figures of the Morley family, their faces a mix of sorrow and longing. The cabin had claimed her. Outside, the sun rose, casting light on the abandoned house. Emily's camera lay at the doorstep, the last image still visible. A smiling face reflected in the glass, eyes empty, grin wide enough to swallow a soul. The Morley cabin waits silently for its next visitors, ready to trap them in its eternal nightmare. Thanks for watching. If these real-life horrors sent shivers down your spine, hit subscribe and ring the bell, because the darkest stories are just getting started. Stay curious, stay cautious, and never stop seeking the truth lurking in the shadows.